All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast, and we've got another exciting and wonderful guest today. I can't wait to introduce him. And I couldn't help but see your face, sir, when I did that drop kick. So we're gonna have to talk a little pro wrestling because you might be a fan. But guys, this is Carmichael Simon. He is a martial arts innovator with over 40 years of experience and a direct lineage to Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, helping pioneer Jhoon Rhee's martial arts ballet, a 5-time international forms champion and 3-time NASKA Triple Crown winner. He broke new ground in sport martial arts with acrokicking, tricking, and the first 720-degree hook kick. Known for fusing martial arts with freestyle dance, Carmichael has performed globally and appeared on shows like WMAC Masters and the Mortal Kombat Live Tour. He's also part of an elite dance crew like Housin Authority and the Architeckz, blending Shaolin tradition with street dance in what he calls XiaolinGruv. A mentor and performer, he continues to inspire through his creative expression and community outreach in California and Texas. Sir, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I didn't know you wrestled. Do you wrestle?
I did for about 10 years. I've been out of it for a bit, but yeah, it was always my dream to be two things in my life I wanted to be when I was a kid. I wanted to be a martial arts instructor and I wanted to be a professional wrestler. And I thought it would be the professional wrestler first. But anyway, yeah, I got a chance to do that for 10 years and a lot of friends still do it. So it's a lot of fun.
Sorry for interviewing you. How did that translate? Use martial arts to wrestling? I guess it's it's different, two-dimensional versus 360, and always knowing there's an audience there.
Right. Yeah, it was actually a pretty easy transition because I always liked performing and physically, it was very easy to learn how to wrestle. The hardest part for me was actually understanding the psychology of professional wrestling and how to put together a really good story because wrestling is all about storytelling. It's just like being a character in a movie. You got to be able to sell and tell the story, right? So yeah, it was a pretty easy, and being a fan, you get to totally geek out and do all the moves that you saw your favorite wrestlers do when you were a kid. So yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, hey, we got the return of WMAC Masters, and I know we're going to talk about that a lot today. But before we get into that, just kind of going back, some history and a little bit about your mentor. You were mentored by the legendary Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee. What's the most important lesson that he taught you that still guides you today?
Yes, I mean, I would also note, I'm the last master under the Jhoon Rhee Institute. So prior to him passing away, 2 weeks prior to him moving on, he asked for me to come to Washington, D.C. to obtain my master's with him. So I've been very fortunate to be with Grandmaster Rhee. He brought me to Russia in '94, and that's when we first opened up the 65 schools when the former Soviet Union collapsed, right, for communism. So diplomacy and lobbying, our national anthems overseas, and they still do the Star Spangled Banner and God Bless America over there in the Eastern Corridor or Russia, in Kiev,
Wow.
Ukraine. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
But one thing I learned from Grandmaster Rhee is his 7 qualities of a champion. So anybody who's part of your business systems as well as individuals and professionals on this, that follow you is power, posture, quickness, timing, endurance, flexibility, and balance. And we learn that through not just the martial arts attributes, but also through the business, as he was a pioneer of bringing martial arts business into our industry. I would also say, the reinforcing of my values came from my sports and conditioning coach, Master Francis Pineda, who's also with the Jhoon Rhee Institute. They taught me it's not just only about those 7 qualities, but, about the enthusiasm of martial arts, the discipline and the humility, right? And, Grandmaster Rhee was a real life superhero. And he taught me that true power isn't about, knocking somebody down, it's about lifting people up. And that's what really drives me still today. And, with Master Charlie Lee, who is my choreographer as well, and he learned under John Chung, right, is flash is trash without basics. So I always had a really solid foundation. And, being Kid Carmichael in WMAC, even though there's a lot of flash and flair, it's always been, built on solid, fundamentals and heart.
That quote sticks out to me. I think within the last like 2 weeks, I have
Mm.
used that in classes many times, that flash is trash without good basics. And just coming out of your mouth right now, it's like, wow, that's kind of cool that like, that's something that a lot of people have, latched onto, because as we watch the martial arts industry, especially sport karate, you're seeing a lot more gymnastics and tricking and juggling and all of that, which I think is amazing. You have to be a talented performer to pull all that off, but at the end of
Yes.
the day, when you're competing in a martial arts tournament, I want to see good kicks. I want to see good punches. I want to see good blocks,
Absolutely.
and so that quote really stands out. But then another thing you said, the word humility, right? In martial arts. It's something that we preach, it's something that we talk about, it's something that's the tenets of what we do. Yet so often we find that quite the opposite is displayed. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, humility also comes with strength, right? To be I'm more of a performer, right, within our industry. So, I deal with a lot of self-discipline, repetition, 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 reps, 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 versus, a combat artist, right, who has a lot of skill set. And, fighting is, as you know, much different than performing. But that's the humility of a martial artist, to know that they can take their mindset and be able to adapt their humility in the most violent of confrontation, all the way to suppressing someone's ego, or just suppressing the environment that they're around. So I look at humility in both categories. It's definitely the yin and yang of life. And I think you learn, not I think you learn that through martial arts. And it's not just achieving the black belt. Obviously it's cliche, it's the first step in the journey, but ultimately, if you're a lifelong martial artist, if you've even passed a decade, you have a responsibility and hopefully an obligation to understand what the true value of humility is. And it's defined differently in different stages of the martial
Hmm.
arts journey.
Hmm. And you talk about the lifestyle of a martial artist. I was teaching our leadership class last night, and I asked the kids, I said, who do you think is the stronger martial artist? The martial artist that trains 4 or 5 days a week, nonstop for 3 years and earns their black belt, or however long it takes to earn their black belt, and then quits, or the martial artist that might train 2 or 3 days a week, but for their lifetime,
Mm.
which one is the stronger martial artist? And they had to think about that because I'm dealing with young students and preteens, and initially, they're like, oh, well, 4 or 5 days a week, you'd be so good, and I'm like, okay, you'd be so good, but what's more important? Being consistent, or putting basically the quality versus quantity type idea. And I just think that when I talk to experienced martial artists such as yourself, someone that is a lifelong martial artist and a lifelong learner, I think it's just so important that we continue to preach the lifestyle of martial arts, versus sometimes, again, in the business, we are a black belt school, black belt, black belt, black belt, black belt. And it's like, that's cool, right, to get your black belt. But I think it's even more cool to be a black belt,
Absolutely. To live it.
right?
Live
Yeah.
it. Yes.
So listen, you've blended martial arts with dance in a truly unique way. How did that fusion begin, and what does Shaolin Groove mean to you?
Yeah. It came naturally for me. I grew up on the East Coast. I love both hip hop and martial arts, especially being quote unquote an 80s kid. They both have rhythm to me, expression and control. And, Shaolin Groove represents that blend for me, where, ancient discipline meets, modern creativity.
Hmm.
It's really my heartbeat. Shaolin Groove is my heartbeat. That's how, the rhythm of the martial arts, colliding with the soul of hip hop. So it was one of those things that I didn't want to follow a trend. And but it was really about starting one, sharing my emotions, and devotion into an explosive style. And even though it's more of a style now for me, it's as me as an identity. That the dance, the practicing of the dance has given me freedom. Martial arts has given me control. And I think just the fusion, and being able to experience that as Kid Carmichael, is my rhythm, it's my flow, it's my high chi, as I like to call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's it's so cool to see like that you've been able to blend these two things that are part of you. And I think that we're as martial artists, we're always trying to find our our groove, as you say, right? And find what fits us, because martial arts is not a one size fits all. It's not a one, you blend and evolve. Anybody that's been training for a number of years, you may have started in Tong Sudo like I did, but then I and started incorporating Krav Maga, and then I started incorporating Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then we've got our Raptor Extreme Karate program, and it's
Mhm.
like, man, that just makes it, and that's I think what makes it easier to be that lifelong martial artist, when you're not so stuck in that tunnel vision of this is the way I learned and this is the only way, um, but truly finding your own unique style and way to express yourself. So yeah, amazing. As a pioneer of acro kicking and tricking in the early 90s, what inspired you to push the boundaries of traditional martial arts forms?
Mm. And look, it's I just didn't want to walk the martial arts path. I wanted to flip, spin, blaze a trail through it. And I was inspired by skateboarders, gymnasts, break dancers, capoeiristas, and anything that really defied, conventional, thinking and thought and visualization. But I thought to myself, looking at images in the 80s, it's like, what if martial arts could fly? I mean, watching old Shokazugi movies and growing up with Ernie Jr. I did watch a little bit of Jet Li or Leland J. and Jet Li, but it was those were my influences watching Bones Brigade. I watched a lot of Tony Hawk and the skateboarders at that time. So you know that's how really tricking was born for me. And I wasn't just trying to fight. I was really trying to express myself. And to me, the stage in itself, because I had a platform to perform, it was my dojo. It's still my sanctuary. I feel the most comfortable on stage. And the world was just my audience. And every flip, every spin, every 720 wasn't just a move for me. It was really a message of this is who I am.
Well, and being 80s kids, right? Like we had the best movies, I think, like ever. Like in my opinion, 80s is still the best decade. Best music, best movies, all the things, right? And so like a couple movies started coming to my mind as you were talking, right? The movie Breakin'.
Yeah.
That came out, and like I had been doing martial arts a little bit already, and it was like you could see how like breaking involved kids and the culture, and I was like, wow, that would be cool to add to martial arts. And then the movie Rad. Do you remember the
Yes.
movie Rad?
Bicycle.
Man,
Yeah. Yeah. The flip. Yeah. Yeah. I remember
I
that.
mean, and so and then you start talking about can you fly? I remember being in fifth grade and watching a bicycle stunt demonstration, and I'll never forget. It was it had the White Snake album.
Yeah.
Here I go again. And I
Yeah.
remember the music. I remember the feeling that I was having when I was watching all the guys from Diamondback. That was the group that did the performance, and just feeling, and I get goosebumps now kind of thinking about it, because you feel so moved by music and those memories that all the emotion that comes when you hear that song again, or you see that performance and watching the big flips. And then of course, being a pro wrestling fan, I grew up watching the WWF, and these guys are flying. Shawn Michaels in his early days was just flying all over the place, jumping off the top rope. And so even being a martial artist, those things always kind of influenced me. As a matter of fact, one of the times that I tested for a higher level black belt, I incorporated almost every finishing move from a wrestler as part of my self defense. It's kind of my way to, like, do what I love to do. But so you're bringing up a lot of the same stuff, and in your day when you were competing, I mean, some of the competitors at that time, I can remember John Valera, Mike
Yeah.
Chat, Mike Bernardo, Cynthia Rothrock, like all these just super amazing athletes. What was it like, competing or being in that era of competition?
Oh, it was amazing. I just, just the aura and just watching individuals, really just like you said, just being humble. But once they touched the floor, they just transformed. They transcended. And it's interesting as you were just talking about rad and really the airwalk. And I think to myself, I'm surprised we never named everything. Right, this generation names everything and they label, with triggers. I'm just noting that
Right.
specifically. I think about watching Cynthia Rothrock with whip chains, or like Ernie Jr. doing his demos with his father, or Mike Chat and his commas, John Valera. It's just amazing whereby if we branded ourselves properly and got names for I think back and like I wish we as an industry we named our moves very
Right.
similar to skateboarding did, or BMX. But like I said, ultimately watching the growth, because you always saw the ability to have potential, and knowing that there was no internet, we were sharing beta maxes and and VHS tapes. Is
Right.
whoever was able to get to the tournament and share those new moves and figure out how to create combinations and variations, and that was the funnest part. And putting it to music, right?
Hmm.
Because the musical form aspect with American style martial arts or American freestyle was something that was really innovated in those 80s time frame. And
Absolutely.
I look forward to, as we continue with WMAC doing the same.
Yeah. Well, you talk about marketing and using that to promote. I think Mike Chat probably did it the best back in the day when XMA was. I mean, that was really cutting edge for the martial arts, because even in the '90s, martial arts for the most part was very, very traditional in most aspects. To do forms to music or to have these extreme forms was still not part of the norm, right? And now it seems like that it's more and more. You see it on TV, you see it in the movies, you see martial arts kind of everywhere because of that, and because of the martial artists that have got involved in the film industry. So yeah, very
Gotcha.
unique. And so you made history though with your 720-degree hook kick. Take us back to the moment and what it meant for the sport and for you to be able to introduce that.
Yeah, I mean, it was electric. It was an amazing night. The kick wasn't only just about the applause, it was about, the evolution of our sport. I wanted to show that a martial artist could be, athletic, artistic, and limitless. And when people saw it, it really sparked a movement, and it showed the next generation that they can fly to. The moment that I hit the 720, I did feel the crowd explode, and it was like unlocking a whole new level of a video game.
Hmm.
It wasn't just a move; it was also a message that martial arts really has no ceiling. And it opened a lot of minds, broke a lot of barriers, and told the world that Kid Carmichael wasn't here to play safe. I was here to revolutionize, and I felt like it was pressing the power button and a declaration that martial arts is really just ready for the next level.
Hmm.
Sort of given permission, right? It's being raised in the Jhoon Rhee Institute with martial arts ballet, and it's basically ballet. Like that's how we train. It's very refined and defined movement, but that foundation really allowed me, and the conditioning allowed me to perform, but also to fly. Because if I did not have those fundamentals, that would have not been possible.
Hmm.
And having the legends behind me, the Charlie Lees and the John Chungs, all out in the Grandmaster Rhees, certainly help as well.
Yeah.
It's like
You know,
having
you talk.
West Coast, and Ernie, Quadrant, Tony Thompson, and the whole West Coast demo team. As pioneers as well. They've done the same on the West Coast. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah. That I love what you said about, just kind of representing the fact that martial arts in general teaches us that there is no ceiling. Once that ceiling is there, it's like we're breaking through it, we're doing this or doing that. As we were doing our happy dollars, as we call them in Rotary, our Rotary Club this morning, one of the things that I brought up was that I've been posting a lot about our 3, 4, and 5-year-old kids, and really what stands out to me is that I watch these little 3, 4, and 5-year-old kids come in super shy, super nervous. They haven't really found themselves yet. They're just kind of figuring things out. But then when you see those breakthrough moments where they just like their confidence just comes out, they start talking more, they start engaging more, they start, when they're playing sports, they start having breakout plays, things like that. And like martial arts does that. Martial arts is what really helps us kind of take things to the next level in all areas of our life. And so while I'm talking about this, we're going to take a quick break just to show one of our sponsors of the show, talking about taking your school to the next level and offering more opportunity for your students. Take a look at Raptor Extreme Karate. All right, and we're back. I'm Jason Flame, and I'm here with Kid Carmichael, and we just watched Raptor Extreme Karate. That's my great friend, Kevin Kowalczyk, 14-time world champion, amazing martial artist who has created a program that will help take your training to the next level in your school. So if you'd like more information, please let me know. I saw the smile on your face, sir. It's just awesome. Like you can feel the energy of that room when you watch that class at the end, right? And isn't that what martial arts is all about, is bringing that energy out? We were just talking about, no ceiling, taking it to the next level. Amazing stuff, right?
Absolutely. It brings me back because I just remember, the chop, punch, spin, chop, punch, switch, and it's just, the blueprint still lives on.
It does. It does. Hey guys, and if you're here watching live, please do me a favor. If you have any questions, any comments, you just want to say hello, drop those in the comments so we know that you're out there, and do us a favor and share this video while you're watching. Next question for you, sir, is, being part of teams like Metro All-Stars and the Ultimate Team Paul Mitchell, what impact did those experiences have on your development as an athlete and as an artist?
Yeah, think of it as Marvel and DC. I got to experience both. We push each other past our limits, and having a team that always looked for raising the bar in the martial arts, what it could look like, what it can feel like, being able to be around elite individuals and athletes who always looked at precision, and creating a new class of creativity was always an honor. We weren't just, I think back, and we weren't just competitors. We were, innovators of that time. And it did help me to grow. It pushed me to support my creativity, taught me how to become a professional. Being part of Paul Mitchell provided me, the opportunity to blend and balance my technical skills as a martial artist, but also my showmanship. And sort of like getting a master's degree, and you were talking about your multiple styles, and was it 7 or 10 years or 10,000 hours? You put enough time in, you get multiple master's degrees, especially at the level of when you're dealing with training with legends, performing on global stages, and learning how to represent something bigger than yourself. And that's really what I gained from my experience, collectively from both teams.
Yeah. Give a shout out real quick to some of your team members, some of the members that helped you back in the day.
Oh yeah, I mean Steve Babcock, Chris Rapol, Christine Banner Rodriguez, Pedro Xavier, Mike Chat, John Valera. I don't David Douglas. Um, wow, I can go to Hector Santiago, Jennifer Santiago, Diego Lopez. Man, the list goes on and on. Hopefully, I'm missing a lot of people.
I know. Well,
And
I put you on the spot to say all those names, right?
Metro was like 100 as a junior. We traveled like 100 kids at every tournament. And I think, obviously rest in peace to Richard Brandon as well as Kevin Thompson. So those are my teammates as well. Larry Lamb. Man, the list goes on. I mean, there's about 20 of us that, somewhat are interconnected and are still part of our industry and contributing in somehow, some way.
And that was going to be my next question is, do you stay in contact? Are these lifelong friendships and relationships? Are you still collaborating with some? And a follow-up question to that would be, are you still following the teams and watching the evolution of all the, the latest members of the teams?
Sure. I would say all three. There was a hiatus that I did take some time off from 1996 to about 2005. That's the time when I actually moved, from the East Coast, from Maryland is where I grew up, to the Bay Area of California, San Jose, Santa Clara area. And I actually built the backbone of telepresence, which is now Zoom and WebEx and Skype. So I'm an architect by trade, and doing video collaboration and doing this is always great to know that at least I've contributed to our sport and our industry through technology, that we were able to scale and provide content and curriculum to the masses. But yes, coming back now for WMAC, all those phone calls have been made. And, we have WMAC Masters that are now legends. And now it's Kid Carmichael from the Ninja Academy, who was anointed as a master, is now looking for the next masters and the next ninjas who need to be part of the Ninja Academy. So those calls have been put out there, and I just look forward to seeing everybody again. And Gabe Renaga, yes, sir.
Here's another name right there. Got to put it up there.
Yes.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Cool.
he pushed me. I every time. Oh my goodness. I hope you're doing well, sir, and thank you for allowing me to share myself on stage with you and pushing me to my talent to the fullest of my capability for 55 seconds.
So you've performed, all around the world, and you've even played iconic characters like Liu Kang. What were some of your favorite performance moments?
Yeah, I mean, Liu Kang was a legendary opportunity to open up Radio City Music Hall. It was amazing. I mean, I think that in itself, to open up 3 days in a row, 8 shows, I think anybody would love that opportunity. I was able to embody a character, who represented the spirit of martial arts at that time, on a global stage. And, I would really say the most, favorite moments for myself outside of being on a tour bus and spending time with amazing talent was really just live performances and just the community spaces. Like you talk about the Rotary or other community things. When you do this, when you are a high-end performer, but you can share yourself locally, when people don't expect what's coming, they become encouraged, and they embrace yourself in that local community, that there's the encouragement and the opportunity to grow, and it can be fostered. And I think that's the most thing I enjoyed, was doing my local and regional tournaments outside the global platform and stages. But pivoting back to WMAC, because it's kind of hand in hand, because I did both of those in the same year. Is that was really my personal highlight, because it showed more of myself as a performer, not just as a fighter, of martial arts, enthusiast, but my character as a person, my story, and my journey. And that's where WMAC, it brings a lot more acclaim to myself, because it's more of a personal relationship that I have. Outside, built, because I said it's my character rather than a character in a video game. Right. And there's only one Kid Carmichael, and there's about maybe a good handful, or maybe a dozen now, Liu Kangs through the decades, right? 3 decades as well, right? Since Housin Pak was the original in Midway. So
right. So give us a little backstory and history. How did you get involved originally with WMAC Masters?
Yes. So actually, I was scouted at the Battle of Atlanta, and that's from Pat Johnson. And they actually provided me a contract right when I hit the 720. I was still a junior, 17 years old, competing, and I obtained my first contract when I stepped on off stage, and the production team was there along with Pat Johnson. Fortunately, I was already scouted prior to, unbeknownst to me, through Pat Johnson, because my godfather is Stephen Ho, and as you know, many of you guys might know, he's acclaimed, with Donatello and Ninja Turtles and Liu Kang's brother in the movie, and Conan, doing his skits as a stunt coordinator for him. And I saw them at North Carolina when I was around 15, 16 years old, when they were filming Turtles 2, and just wasn't of age yet. So I had to wait a couple years. And when that time came, this opportunity arose, and I was more than willing to embrace it.
That's so awesome. I love hearing the backstory. Tell me a little bit more about the experience, on set, how the show began, and meeting your co-stars and some of your interactions there.
Yes. I think first and foremost was the Shannon Lee. Meeting Shannon Lee as a kid, and being a Bruce Lee fan as well, and knowing the lineage and the relationship he had with Grandmaster Jhoon was something that was monumental for me. In addition, I don't know if anybody knows this, but Billy Zabka as well was also going to be a commentator. So I had the opportunity to meet him in the first season as well.
Cool.
Obviously production and other situations arose, but we did 3 hours of rehearsals a day, and then we would film for 12 hours the next day for our character. But if we weren't filming our character, we were ninjas. So that's why I love the B-side, meaning the B-side, love being a ninja, is because I like to wreck, I like to take hits, I like to stunt. But obviously to do the forward-facing character is always great. It just brings a different different look and a different feel when you're on screen.
And any really big moment or big memory that stands out from your time back then?
I think just being around everybody. I mean, we were able to get to a point when, Pat Johnson moved on, and I worked with Isaac Florentine, who was working on Power Rangers, and bringing in the Alpha Stunt team, which was the Japanese stunt team was amazing, because I was able to then meet international choreographers and stunt coordinators who worked on other types of franchises. And, there was a super combo that I do called, 540 hook butterfly twist, 540 hook kick aerial, which it was interesting because it was the first time they even saw it. So they're trying to figure out how to film it. And I don't think to this day, when I look back, I don't think they actually captured it. I think they captured it in one shot, but not in the fight scene. So, hopefully one day that'll be recreated as we bring the next generation of WMAC Masters to the screen.
So what do we have to look forward to? What's in the works? What are we going to see first? Where will people see it?
Yes. So WMACmasters.org is our landing page on our site. We currently have a Kickstarter up now. This is actually self-funded, no investors. We wanted to make sure that this came from the community first. All of our athletes, all of our schools, everything was built around really the outcomes and the flagship of WMAC Masters. Only because we look at it from a model and a brand, because before that was Power Rangers, which is Japanese animation, and Ninja Turtles as well is Golden Harvest. So the investment of WMAC is homegrown here domestically, and we've developed a lot of athletes, created a lot of business models around it, and it actually brought students into the schools. And outside of Karate Kid, and I don't know if Cobra Kai is converting the same, but if I think about that time frame, 80s and 90s, schools were franchising at the time via EFC and UP and other types, and obviously others have moved on from those brands, but we've all learned the same business structure, so it was only right to bring WMAC Masters back, for one, and obtain, luckily we were able to obtain the trademark for entertainment and merchandise. So the Kickstarter is about merchandise, but we are heading to the US Open and the MayaCon, or Maya Convention, here in July. So quest for the next, looking for the next, and meeting the legends as a casting call. And then hopefully in the Maya side, we're going to be doing the we have a health and wellness as well as stunt seminar that we'll be conducting as well. And we look forward to doing both. And then from there, you just continue to be agile through the process. And, hopefully as we continue to work through the docu-series, that's pretty much the goal for the end of the year, to get the content necessary for us to share ourselves as a collective industry.
Wow. Well, when you were talking about Karate Kid helped kind of fill the schools in the mid 80s, is Cobra Kai doing the same? I mean, I have mixed feelings on it because Cobra Kai is so different than how the Karate Kid was presented. And we're in a totally different time because martial arts is already so mainstream versus back then when it was relatively new. And interesting, that Pat Johnson had such a big hand in the Karate Kid as well as WMAC Masters, Ninja Turtles, many other movies. Pat Johnson was actually my instructor, Dennis Ichikawa. He was his instructor. So I have a direct lineage to Mr. Johnson. Met him a handful of times, but he has had such an imprint on the martial arts industry and in the film industry. So yeah, what definitely an amazing time. I don't know if Cobra Kai has actually converted to new students the way that Karate Kid or the UFC even did. But it's nice to see that there's those other outlets that are showing people. One thing that I liked about WMAC Masters that I remember was there was always the character education included, the life skills, in those in EFC days and UP and Maya, as I served many years with Maya as a consultant. Character education was something that was almost it was built into martial arts, and we weren't really taught that way. We had to be taught how to teach character education better. But WMAC Masters always did a great job because there's always a little a lesson at the end of the show, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's how we're looking at WMAC. It's not just Masters anymore. As a corporation, we will have a health and wellness sector and a safety and security sector as well. Because as you know, as martial artists, you have different chapters and phases in your life. Some individuals go into stunts, so they open up schools, and eventually they have families. And eventually they become wise and they age differently. So, there's other types of vitamins and supplements and nutrition things. And we have professionals. And I think within our industry, that's something that collectively we can all support, because the masters who are now legends, when they moved on from our industry, they continued to use those 8 points of a dragon star in different industries. So it's nice to have them come back as well as expand it, to you all.
Well, one thing that you mentioned and that I know to be true with the martial arts industry, maybe more than any other, there's so much collaboration and so much collaboration across the board, different types of business. Like you talked about, health and wellness and, just bringing different things to the table. I'm seeing more and more even on the business side of bringing, before you would look at another martial arts school to see how to grow your school. Now we're looking at other types of businesses and morphing the martial arts business to make it more community friendly, to make it more family friendly, to make it more reality based, whatever it might be. But, just meeting different people. And as you mentioned with WMAC before, you were able to meet, international and global contacts. And it seems like everybody in the martial arts industry is connected somehow to someone else, but that's how it works, right? It's always making those connections and those relationships. Switching over a little bit and coming back, actually, what do you think is missing in today's martial arts or sport martial arts scene, and how would you like to see it continue to evolve?
Yes. We have an insane amount of talent today, but sometimes we forget the soul. It's not just about the high scores or the viral tricks. It's about the connection, the creativity, and the purpose. I want to see martial arts evolve into a full-blown performance art, fighting with feeling, kicking with the story, and, performance, with power again. and the spirit gets lost in the competition at times. And I'd love to see more storytelling, musicality, and individuality, where the martial arts becomes a universal language again. And it's okay. Let us keep the tradition, keep that alive, but we still need to push it forward. And martial arts should inspire, not only impress.
I love it. Well, when we were talking earlier, about ballet, Jhoon Rhee ballet, I remember in the early mid 80s when I had just started martial arts, my instructor would put on a show every year, and it was called the Martial Arts Ballet. Something tells me that I think that he may have been inspired by Jhoon Rhee on this. And we would have a martial arts ballet, and it would be a show. It would be a kind of like a dance recital at the end of the year for everybody. We would have the martial arts show, and there would be storytelling. There would be the ninja scene, and there would be the old wise master telling his son stories of the martial arts, and then having a demonstration showing how the different styles were created. And this was back, like I remember, 86 and 87 were the two that I did. And then when I opened my school, in 96, we ran a show. I think we changed the name of it, but kind of following that same concept of creating a story and teaching martial arts through that story, which is exactly what you were just talking about. And there's so much rich history and tradition, and much of what we do is passed down through those storytellings. One of my favorite training days was when I would train with my instructor, and we would do all our forms, but after, it would always end with like, well, you remember this guy, he used, and then like he would go on to tell you the story, and it was always story time that was probably the most interesting to me, because I already knew all the forms. We were just getting a good workout,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I'm following you on that, and I think that that's what keeps the tradition alive.
absolutely. I look forward to some time in this lifetime is when we have a Nutcracker or Swan Lake, where every style has the ability to share a part of that scene. And if we can do that as a culture, as an industry, that'd be amazing to see. I would love to
So,
witness.
sounds like a project for you to get started on.
I know. Been working out my entire life.
So you've remained active in both martial arts and dance communities. How do you stay connected, inspired, and relevant? And that, key word is, how do we stay relevant across the different generations? Because, you started in the 80s, and the kids now are different in the 2020s.
Yeah, I guess first is never stop learning. And I do drop a lot of wisdom, but I also soak it in so I can understand, the perspectives, whether it's at, a tricking gathering, a martial arts tournament, or just appearances. I show up, I'm present, I contribute, and I just keep evolving. And, relevance isn't just about staying trendy. It's about staying true. So I'm pretty curious. I'm a pretty curious person by nature. So, the culture will continue to evolve in general. So will I, just based on curiosity. So, I tend to, stay plugged in and pass the torch with purpose.
And isn't that the true martial arts spirit of being a forever white belt, right? And always being open to learning and growing. One of the things that I talk about is, if you feel like you know it all, you might be in the wrong room, right? You need to get in a room with people that might know more than you, so that you have something to learn, because you're not gonna continue to grow if you're the best one in the room. So you've got to be able to maybe change that room and surround yourself with people that are going to continue to teach you, and being open to that, being open to learning.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great. What's the legacy that you hope to leave behind, both as a martial artist and as a creative performer?
Yeah, I want to be remembered as a spark that lit the fire. The kid who turned kicks into poetry, and battles into stories, stages into arenas of just self-expression. Somebody who broke walls, not boards only. Someone who used movement to tell stories, to inspire freedom, and who built bridges along the way. And Kid Carmichael wasn't just a performer, he was a storyteller. And my legacy is also, just be peaceful, be fluid, stay in harmony with yourself, and above all, for yourself, make your style unforgettable.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I mean, that's a huge legacy to leave behind, and people to be inspired by. So thank you for sharing all of that. Thanks for your time today. I was super excited when you accepted, and I was telling my wife, I'm like, I got like a real legend coming on today. This is like super cool because, being an 80s and 90s kid, we were inspired by your work and the work by your team and all the things that you've been involved in. So I'm just super excited. It's like when you're young and you get to meet your Hulk Hogan's and The Rock or Steve Austin,
Okay.
here we are with you. So thanks again for being on the show. Is there anything that you want to add or anything that you might want to ask me?
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm gonna have some other conversations about this wrestling journey because I'm quite intrigued.
Okay.
I think it's really just sharing once again for everybody out there. WMAC, support the Kickstarter. Like I said, this is all internally funded and crowdfunded, and we'd like to hit certain pledges to be able to unlock certain opportunities, bring back the DVDs, bring back the streaming of the original TV show, launch the docu-series, open up new business units. So we do want to activate your network as well, and ecosystem, to see where we can collectively bring health and wellness and personal safety and security. And wherever we can support the industry, let us know. We'll be here. We have a solid team who does design and animation and all the business tools necessary. So we're here to support the industry and help brand and brand and license through WMAC, so we can help our communities and our regions continue to educate martial arts and the lifestyle of these generations. Because you think back, and WMAC was only a 4 to 12-year-old market. Now we're dealing with 44 and over, and 4 other markets in between, right? So
Right.
I see the trickers or the competitors from 13 to 17 now. I see the new up and coming stunt guys and production individuals from 18 to 25. I see 26 to 35-year-olds raising families or opening up schools or going into their career or getting, continuing their college education through PhDs and masters. And then you have your 35, 36 and older, which is, stabilizing the family, creating a legacy, doing wealth management. So, I think we collectively have all experienced that. So, if there's programs out there that's already in flight, and if you would like to utilize the trademark and the brand of WMAC Masters, just go to WMACmasters.org, and we will have discussions with you to utilize a trademark. And I think we're just really excited because the brand is in the martial arts industry.
Yeah.
It was not before. And that makes it that much more appealing for all of us.
Yeah. Exciting times. Well, something that just, came to mind is number one, would love to have more of the cast members on the show to talk about their story, but maybe potentially putting together a WMAC Masters kind of reunion roundtable show would be a lot of fun to get you back. So we'll have some conversations about that, and we could definitely talk a little bit more wrestling offline when you have some time. But listen, I know you've got a hard stop here in just a few minutes, and I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you to everybody that watched us live today. Please, again, like, share, comment on the video, subscribe to Master Motivation Podcast on YouTube. And guys, listen, go out and make it a great day, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for your time, sir.